Do the Pittsburgh Steelers need more Justin Fields? I'll explain why on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready. Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome into the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. Make sure to listen to every episode of Locked On NFL on Amazon Music. I am your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today, as I am every single Thursday, by Locked On NFL expert, the Data Queen, Michelle Majuk. On today's episode, I'll tell you why the San Francisco 49ers have a must-win game against the Green Bay Packers. We'll talk about the HARBAUGH BOWL between Jim Harbaugh and John Harbaugh, but we will start with a Thursday night football game between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cleveland Browns. Before we dive in, do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen and for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. It's Crossover Thursday, and Crossover Thursday is always presented by Prize Pick. Checks out your favorite team's crossover episode to get ready for their game this weekend, and download the Prize Picks app. Use the code Locked On NFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Michelle, the Steelers are having some red zone issues. Justin Fields could be the answer.
No, he really can't be, because I get it, right? They brought him in at the end of last game to beat the Steelers, although he almost ruined it for them, because instead of diving forward to get that extra yard, he slid early. Instead, like, he could have easily got the first down to close out the game. He slid early, so then they had to, go for it with Najee Harris. They got that first down by an inch to be able to close out the clock. But this is the thing with Justin Fields, is he makes stupid decisions, right? And he's a fumbling machine. So I was worried about that too. So why would you, like, the Steelers need to just not turn over the ball, don't do stupid things. So don't put him in there where he could fumble the ball away or make a stupid decision where you're sliding early for no reason.
Well, listen, I understand that you feel that way, but I will say, they've had struggles, and my guy Chris Carter from Locked On Steelers is at least considering the move.
I feel like, the Steelers always want to test things out, right? Like with Russell Wilson in, they wanted to give him time to settle into the offense. Now I think he is settling. He's still not fully settled. I think there's still things that he's learning all the time. But in this game, then you also were able to say, hey, we're bringing out the pace. We're switching up the pace. Now it's time for Justin Fields. I thought the times in which they brought Justin Fields in made a lot of sense, because they were plays where you're the Steelers, you wanted to protect the football, but you wanted to get yards. And, like, especially on that last possession, even though he slid early on that play, I thought that was a good play, because the Ravens knew the Steelers wanted to run it. They did not want to put the ball in the air. They did not want to risk stopping the clock to give the Ravens a chance to have a field goal drive, to win the game. So it's like, we know you want to run the ball, so we got to make you think. So how do we make you think? We make you think with the really fast quarterback in the backfield, where you're going to have to account for the option run on top of Najee Harris or Justin Fields, or a potential pass in that situation.
Listen, Michelle, I totally recognize all of the downfalls that you brought up. But at the end of the day, the Steelers are 30th in the NFL in red zone offense, only converting red zone opportunities into touchdowns 44.4% of the time. That's worse than the New England Patriots, worse than the Tennessee Titans, worse than the Cleveland Browns, who they're going to be facing off with on Thursday night. I think in this game against the Browns, because you're 8-2 and because the odds are that the Steelers are going to be able to win this game and win pretty handily, I think this may be a good spot to at least give it a shot. And if Fields fumbles, if he makes stupid decisions and all the things that you're worried about, then fine, scrap the plan. But with the way the Steelers have, I don't want to say performed, but I mean their lack of performance in the red zone so far this year, I think you should at least try some things out so that you have some things in your back pocket if you continue to struggle with this as you get into more important games down the line.
See, I think it could work from time to time. And I do think, we bring them in for like some wrinkles and some play calls. Yeah. But this is not the game I would want to waste that play for, right? Like, they have some really hard games coming up against the Eagles and the Chiefs and the Bengals twice. So, like, the Steelers shouldn't need to come up with these, like, tricky plays to be able to beat the Browns. I do kind of feel like this is a trap game, these are games the Steelers typically end up losing under Mike Tomlin. They don't stay focused against the bad teams, especially after a big win. So I could see this being a trap game. And, a way to lose that game is bringing in Justin Fields and him fumbling. Right. So I would just say, just keep working on fixing your red zone offense with Russ back there.
Yeah, that's fair too. I'm very curious to see how they handle it. If we see any kind of wrinkles with Justin Fields, just how they approach this will be very interesting. Before we kind of look at the Cleveland side of things, Michelle, I think we're both probably going to go with the Steelers win in this one. I know that I see the classic reverse psychology that you're pulling with the Steelers usually lose these games. But I mean, for the record, we are both picking the Steelers to win this game, right?
I am, but I don't feel confident about it. I actually felt better about them beating the Ravens than I do in this game. But it's a short week after coming off. That was a physically hard game against the Ravens, and it was a game they needed to win, and that was great. Emotional game. And now they have to go to Cleveland. And, Jameis Winston, you never know what you're going to get out of him. You could get 400 yards and 4 passing touchdowns. You can get 400 yards, 4 passing touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. You just never know. So that's what worries me. If this was Deshaun Watson, I probably wouldn't be as worried.
Right. That seems fair. The spread right now on FanDuel is plus 3.5. Would you take the Browns with the 3.5 points?
No.
Yeah, I can't do that. I still got to go Steelers minus 3.5.
I think I'm just being a worried fan.
I might. Yeah, I can't. I can't do it because the reality is the Browns are a disaster. But let me say this. This is really the only point I have on the Browns, because what's the point of talking about the Cleveland Browns? I may be in the minority here, and that's fine. But I don't think that Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry should be fired. I continue to say I believe that the owner, Jim Haslam, wanted the Deshaun Watson trade. He said, do whatever what has to happen to get Deshaun Watson on this team. I think that they were forced to do it. And even if they were on board with it, you don't tell your boss, no, I'm not doing that. No, you'll have to fire me to do that. Like, they're just not doing that. I think that Kevin Stefanski last year won Coach of the Year. He was incredible. That didn't just change. The Browns have a ton of talent on the roster. I think it would be a mistake to part ways with Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski and throw the baby out with the bathwater when you get rid of Deshaun Watson. Am I crazy?
No, maybe Andrew Berry has to go. I don't know. I feel like someone has to go in this situation with making this terrible of a mistake. Now, maybe it is on the owner. I guess only the owner knows, right? If it was on Andrew Berry or him. And I think that's maybe why Andrew Berry still has a job, because maybe he's like, okay, I guess that wasn't on you. They are projected right now to have the 2nd overall pick. So do they take a quarterback with that pick? Do they shoot for a quarterback again? Or how long do they give this Deshaun Watson experiment? But they're still owe him $1 gazillion. So I don't know.
Yeah, they're in a tough spot either way. But I know the Cleveland Browns fans that I congregate with, they want a new quarterback. They want Shedeur Sanders. So we'll see how that goes. But with that being said, we got another HARBAUGH BOWL, and it's an important game between the Baltimore Ravens and the Los Angeles Chargers. It's Locked On NFL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Built Rewards. Listen up, renters. Ever feel like you're stuck in this loop of rent payments and just watching your money vanish into thin air? It's time to turn the rent game around and start earning some serious rewards. That's where Built Rewards comes in. Built, B-I-L-T, is breaking ground as a neighborhood rewards program that hooks you up with points on your rent. Every month, pay your rent and watch the Built points roll in. You can use those points to jet off on a dream vacation, put your points towards a flight or hotel stay with 500 plus airlines, 700,000 plus hotels and properties. You can also use the points to book a studio fitness class or redeem them towards a future rent payment. They're designed to meet your lifestyle. Earn points by paying your rent right now when you go to joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNFL. That's JOINBILT.com/LockedOnNFL. Make sure you use our URL so they know that we sent you. Joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNFL to start earning points with your rent payments today. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. You can get ready to tackle the second half of the NFL action this season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can open up the FanDuel Sportsbook app. You can check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more on the same exact page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. And Steelers money line seems like a good way to use that first $5 bet. Make sure you do it on FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Michelle, let's continue today's edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. Talked about this Thursday night football matchup between the Steelers and the Cleveland Browns. Be interesting to see if the Steelers throw in any wrinkles to help with their red zone issues. That's something that we're going to be watching for, as we both think that the Steelers will win the game. But moving on to a team that just lost to the Steelers last week, and it's the Baltimore Ravens and their head coach, John Harbaugh, going up against his brother, Jim Harbaugh, who is the head man for the surging Los Angeles Chargers. Michelle, in this one thing that I'm very interested to watch is the usage of Derrick Henry by the Baltimore Ravens. And it's something that in Ravenland, they're maybe not so happy about. My guy, Kevin Ostreicher from Locked On Ravens, talked about that.
And we had that conversation a couple weeks ago against Cleveland, Q. Your best players aren't out there in key situations, critical moments. And I think that gives the defense a pass. Because not only was Derrick Henry not out there on that 2-point conversion, Zay Flowers was not out there, Rashad Bateman was not out there. And so essentially your top 3 offensive playmakers, not named Lamar Jackson, are sitting on the sideline. And I thought that they gave Pittsburgh's defense a pass on that play. And then Mike Tomlin and Patrick Queen after the game both talked about how they called that timeout once Baltimore got into their set to kind of see where they were at. And then Baltimore called a different play, and John Harbaugh was, I guess, disappointed in the result and this, that, and the other. You know, he kind of said on that, you know, the play was called, Derrick wasn't in it, this, that, and the other. But even if you want to give the Ravens a pass for giving them 13 carries, which I know that you and I are not necessarily doing that, not having him out on the 2-point call, I think, was a huge, huge mistake.
Michelle, I got to tell you, as a Tennessee Titans fan, getting some massive deja vu. This is the same thing that Titans fans used to complain about. Derrick Henry not out on the field on 3rd and shorts. Derrick Henry not used on 3rd downs. Oh, when we win, we give Derrick Henry 20 carries. When we lose, Derrick Henry only gets 13. Correlation, causation are different things. Derrick Henry gets more carries and wins because you are winning, so you run the football. You throw the ball to score, to get up, and then you run the ball to salt away the clock. So when you're losing and you have to throw the ball, Derrick Henry can't be as involved. The core of this discussion is Derrick Henry is a limited player skill set-wise. He's a one-trick pony with a great trick. He cannot run a regular route tree for a running back out of a backfield. He is not an asset in the passing game. And because of his limited skill set, game flow will dictate his usage. I am so sick of this conversation, and it's hilarious to me that Baltimore fans are doing it all over again.
But I do 100% agree that it's absurd for him not to be on that 2-point conversion play. I mean, you could say whatever you want about Derrick Henry, and maybe you can't use him as much as you'd like to on the 3rd downs, especially in the situation of the Steelers game. I felt like they kept getting them in deeper 3rd downs than they're normally in, right? There's a lot of penalties called on them too to put them even further. So yeah, they have Justice Hill out there who's a better pass catcher than he is. By the way, though, if teams with any time the Titans use him a little check down, I mean, he could take that ball 80 yards because it's so hard to tackle.
A screen pass.
A screen pass. Like, you can use him in that area. But not having him in that 2-point conversion is absurd, knowing how good he is around the goal line. And even if you didn't want to give it to him, having that threat there and not knowing if Lamar is going to keep it or hand it off to Derrick Henry, that could have completely changed up. That was a terrible play call to begin with.
Yeah, the play call was bad.
Yeah. But not having Derrick Henry out there is not having Derrick Henry out there is inexcusable. That's crazy.
I honestly have way more of an issue with not having Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman out
Oh,
there.
yeah.
I think the idea of rolling out with Lamar Jackson and giving him a run pass option, I like that idea entirely. Now you could say you could start that with a play action fake to Derrick Henry, but if that's the play, Derrick Henry out there, you're playing with 10 men against 11. Like he just literally is not going to help you in the pass game.
Think about that split second that defenses are going to stop because they don't know if it's going to Henry or Lamar. That split second makes the world of a difference when you're going against Lamar Jackson, who's insanely fast, right? If you're that split second off, that's going to change the play. Now, maybe not on that one because they had that down. I mean, Lamar was going nowhere.
Was no chance.
But but Henry being out there, I don't think that's 10 on 11. I think that's like giving you the extra advantage. I think you might be a little bit bitter, honestly. Derrick Henry's amazing. I think you're a bitter Titans fan. That's what I'm going to call out right now.
Well, I mean, I'm not bitter about him going to the Ravens. I've been waiting for Derrick Henry to be off the Titans for a while now because of the limitations that he puts on your offense. Oh, yeah, because
you guys are so much better now with Tony Pollard.
And the limited skill set. I mean, it's not about being better. I mean, the Titans weren't going to be better than the Ravens no matter what. It's about having a less predictable offense moving forward, and you're not going to do that with Derrick Henry. So it's just funny to me that Ravens fans are fighting about the same exact things that Titans fans fought about, and the problem is that Derrick Henry is not useful in the passing game unless it's a screen. So that, they can argue all they want about the play calls, but the coaches are right to not have him on the field as much. And if you're down, you can't run the ball with him. You just can't do that. So I understand what's going on in Baltimore right now, but on the other side of it, the Los Angeles Chargers.
Bitter.
I didn't want Derrick Henry on the team, so I don't even know what that means.
Bitter.
You could go. It's on wax. I'm very obvious on Twitter about how I feel. So, but can the Chargers catch the Chiefs in the AFC West? Something that our guys at Locked On Chargers discussed this week.
Yeah. I think it is a little bit far-fetched here because obviously the Chargers only play them one more time. That can only guarantee the Chiefs 2 losses on the season. So you have to look at the rest of the teams that they play, and it's kind of 3 games against sub-500 teams, and then it's 4 games against plus 500 teams. They play in the Panthers, the Raiders, and then, of course, the Browns, and then, they have the Chargers, the Texans, the Steelers, and the Broncos. So yeah, I think there's definitely possibility for them to pick up a couple more losses, but I'm with you. You can't worry about what the Chiefs are doing. You got to focus on your 1-game seasons week after week after week until you look up, see where the dust is settled at the end of the year. You can't play this game worried about your opponents other than the opponent that you have that Sunday or Monday to go up against. So the Chargers have to take care of their business. I'm going to sell the fact that I think they're going to go, 7-0 the rest of the season. I think that's just a little bit too much. I'd love to see it, obviously, but I can't sit here with full confidence and say that that's going to happen.
I get that you can't have confidence in it, and you look at who the Chiefs play in the next few games: Panthers, Raiders. They got the Browns in there too. But if the Chargers beat them in 3 weeks, and then the Texans, and then the Chiefs on Christmas, or then the Steelers on Christmas, and then finish with the Broncos, who are a better team than it seems, I could absolutely see the Chiefs potentially losing 4 games here. And if they do that, and the Chargers are one of those losses, the Chargers at least have a chance.
No, they definitely have a chance, especially the Chiefs should have lost to the Broncos, right? A blocked punt at the end of the game. That's so rare. They could have lost to the Buccaneers very easily, and they didn't have Chris Godwin or Mike Evans in that game. So there's definitely a way. Unfortunately, they do have the easiest schedule with the Panthers and the Raiders, but once they hit those Texans, Steelers, Broncos, that's what it's going to come down to. Obviously, the Chargers have to beat the Chiefs in their next matchup to have a chance.
Yes.
But I still think they're very much in the running to win this division.
Yeah, and I think you look at the schedule for the Chargers. They play the Ravens. If they win this game, they play the Falcons. The Falcons are a beatable team. I think the Chargers are better than the Falcons. Then that Chiefs game, they play the Buccaneers. They play the Broncos, the Patriots, and finish with the Raiders. It's not inconceivable that the Chargers could run the table here if they really get hot. But this game will really determine how people view the Chargers if they prove it against the Ravens team. And I got to tell you, if the Ravens lose this game, the way we look at the Ravens, like last week yesterday I was talking with Luke, like, who do you trust more, the Ravens or the Bills or the Steelers, like in the AFC, if it's not the Chiefs? And I don't think the Ravens are in that conversation if they lose this game.
Yeah, if they lose another game against a really good defense. I know they beat up on the Bills earlier, but there are teams that just get hot too soon, right? And maybe that's what we're going to see out of the Ravens. Now, we could be totally overreacting. Lamar always struggles against the Steelers. The Ravens just struggle against the Steelers. They can come out and kill the Chargers. Who know? But I think we're going to learn a lot about both of these teams, the Chargers and the Ravens, in this matchup.
100%. And another game that's going to tell us a lot about these teams is the 49ers against the Packers. Historic matchup. We're going to talk about it. It's Locked On NFL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. All right. In life, we don't really take a moment to say thank you to the people that we should. I would tell you that I want to say thanks and give a shout out to my wonderful co-host, the Data Queen, Michelle Maju, off screen. Shout out to you. But there's another person that you need to make sure that you give thanks to, and that is yourself. Sometimes it's hard to remind ourselves that we're trying our best to make sense of everything in this crazy world, and it's not easy. So here's a reminder to send thanks to people in your life, including yourself. All right. And you can do that even more with BetterHelp. I've worked with BetterHelp. It was a great experience. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, you have to give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, suited to your schedule. And what I like is you fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, but you can also switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Let the gratitude flow with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, Michelle, let's continue and cap off today's edition of Locked On NFL. Talked about some great football games. Steelers, Browns. Excited to watch the Steelers in that one, I will say. And hey, a little upset potential. You're not wrong. These division games. The HARBAUGH BOWL on Monday Night Football between the the Ravens and the Chargers. That's going to be great. But this game we got on Sunday between the 49ers and the Green Bay Packers. Very, very intriguing for multiple reasons. Now, before we dive in, thanks again for making Locked On NFL your first listen. Check out the afternoon edition of Locked On NFL, hosted by the barber himself, Tony Wiggins, in the barber shop. You got to check out that show as well. Make sure you get subscribed, stay subscribed to the Locked On NFL podcast. But Michelle, I grew up in a Packers household. Dad's been a Packers fan since the 60s. Now, I chose my own path. Some could say I chose poorly. All right, maybe so. But the point is, I've watched a lot of Green Bay Packers games, a lot. And the 49ers, Terrell Owens catching the slant on the goal line, Colin Kaepernick in the 2000 teens running all over the Packers for a record-breaking performance in the playoffs. Some of the matchups we've had just within the last couple of years. I mean, the 49ers have truly been the Green Bay Packers kryptonite, and this game right here would be a great opportunity for the Green Bay Packers to not only get a win, but just really eliminate the 49ers from the playoffs entirely. And my guy, Peter Bukowski from Locked On Packers, talked about the opportunity.
We remember what happened in 2019 against the 49ers. We remember what happened in 2021 against the 49ers in the postseason. Embarrassing. Right now, the Packers sit at 7-3. Now, they're a game back of the Minnesota Vikings, though they don't hold the tiebreaker, but they'll play again. And they're 2 games back of the Detroit Lions, but they are well over 50% by whatever model you want to look at to make the playoffs. Does that mean they're going to make it? No, but they have a very good chance as we stand here today. The 49ers, by contrast, are 5-5. If the Packers beat the 49ers on Sunday at Lambeau Field on national television, their playoff hopes are all
but over. All right. They're all but over, Peter. And I agree with him. This is a must win for the San Francisco 49ers. They have 0-0 shot of making the playoffs if they don't win this game. Like, it seems pretty clear cut to me. Do you think otherwise, Michelle?
No, they have to win this game. And yeah, obviously it's not over if they get their 6th loss, it's not over. I mean, if you finish the season 11-6, you're going to make the playoffs, right? In a 7 seed playoff format now. So it's not over until really you get that 8th loss. And then it's really like, okay, you're probably not going to make it. But yeah, they have a super hard schedule. They have to go to Buffalo after this game. So this game against the Packers, they cannot lose another conference game as well. But I mean, I think these two teams are very evenly matched up. They could easily have the opposite records. I mean, the Packers have won each of the last 3 games off of a kick on either side of the team, right?
Yeah.
2 games in a row, they won a last-second field goal that they kicked, and then last week they won due to a blocked kick against the Bears, who stink. And then the 49ers, 3 of their losses came in a 4th quarter when they had a solid lead, and there was no reason for them to lose. But they didn't play with heart. They didn't finish out the game, and then that's why they lost. I have no idea what way this game's going to go. I could never tell you how to bet. Do you have an inkling of how this game's going to go?
I don't even have a lean right now because I think the Packers got some fraudulence to them.
They do.
But it's hard to trust the 49ers. They have lost 3 games this year where they've been leading with less than 2 minutes against a division rival. Like, it's literally historic. And you made the great point. They play the Bills next week. 4 weeks from now on December 30th, they play the Lions. They have games against the Bears, the Rams, the Dolphins, who are much improved. They finish with the Cardinals. Like, we could say you're not truly eliminated until you get 8 losses, which, I mean, statistically speaking, I agree with. But with the way their schedule looks, I don't know. To me, this is a must win. And the guys over at Locked On 49ers kind of talked about the data behind that as well.
And if the 49ers beat the Packers this week, they have a little bit over 50% chance to make the playoffs. And, about 54%, it looks like, to make the playoffs if they beat the Packers. If they lose to the Packers, that drops all the way down under 15% chance to make the playoffs. So essentially what that's telling me is this is a playoff game right now in week 12 against the Green Bay Packers. Now, the Cardinals have a big swing, but even if they lose, it only drops them to 40%. And the Niners would jump ahead of the Cardinals percentage-wise if the Niners win, Cardinals lose. And if the Cardinals win, their chances jump up over 75% to make the playoffs. So the 49ers, it's a lot more dire. And you want to be, 55% chance to make the playoffs and not 15% chance or worse to make the playoffs. And that's the difference in the swing if the 49ers win or lose this game against the Packers.
Well, I will say, looking at the FanDuel line right now, it's -2.5 for the Packers. I think with the Packers being at home and it being under 3 points, which is a key line, I probably would go Packers -2.5.
The reason I'm going to go Packers as well, and it will break my heart as a 49ers fan if they win, Jordan Love's playing bad, but this matchup is really good for him, especially if Nick Bosa doesn't play. So Jordan Love ranks among 36 qualified quarterbacks, Jordan Love ranks 31st on 3rd down, 34th versus man coverage, last versus the blitz, last under pressure, and 32nd in tight window throws. The 49ers are very bad on 3rd down and defense. They don't play a lot of man coverage. They have the lowest blitz rate in the NFL, and they're not going to be able to generate pressure without Nick Bosa. And they don't force tight window throws because their secondary is kind of all over the place. So for all those things that he's terrible in, Jordan Love, the 49ers defense is also, or they just don't play a lot of man coverage or blitz. So, I think Love could end up having a better game than we've been seeing. And if Brock Purdy doesn't, change, I don't know. Purdy played so bad last game. Yeah. It is a must-win game, but this being in Lambeau, I think I'm going to give it to the Packers.
Well, we'll see if the 49ers kind of amend what they normally do without having Nick Bosa on the field. I think that would be the right thing to do, especially in a must-win situation like this. But that'll be an interesting game within the game thing to see is how the 49ers defense chooses to approach this. Do you change what you do to do what the other team doesn't do well against, or do you stay with what you do in hopes that that's just what you do best? Very interesting to see. But that's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On NFL. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. For me, the madman Tyler Rowland, and my co-host, Michelle Majuk, as we tell you every single Thursday, stay safe out there.
Bye, y'all.